Hello and welcome to the Useful Formulas and Functions in Excel 1 webinar. My name is Amit Khondokar, a specialist in the area of data analysis and machine learning. This webinar is offered by Continuing and Professional Education Directorate at the University of Doha for Science and Technology. Before we go ahead, let us look at an overview of the topics that will be covered during this webinar. We'll begin with a review of the interface and tools. It is very important to be acquainted to the user interface of Excel so that we can navigate to them whenever needed. Followed by the review of interface and tools, we will be doing a review of cell referencing. It is very important to know how cells in Excel are referenced or named, as we need to use them appropriately in our calculations and analysis throughout. We will be looking at two major types of referencing in this webinar: relative and absolute referencing, and both of them have their utility in different scenarios. Followed by reviewing of cell referencing, we will do a review of ways of using formula in Excel. We will be looking at two ways of using formulas in Excel. They are either user-defined function or built-in function. Sometimes we can even combine them. A built-in function where it is customized based on the user definition. Followed by that, we'll be doing lots of demo of using built-in functions such as sum, min, max, average, count. After that, we will be doing a quick review of some logical functions, SUMIF and COUNTIF, which are advanced version of sum and count. Following that, we will do a quick where we will let you know about what are the materials that will be available to you for a full-fledged lesson. So that's the whole outline of the whole webinar, and hope you enjoy the whole session. It is very important to know how to navigate through Excel to use it efficiently. Let us have a quick recap of the interface of the Microsoft Excel, which will be same irrespective of the MS Office version. The following are the important features that are important to use Excel efficiently and will help us to explore it further. As we can see on the left, we have a snapshot of the Microsoft Excel. On the top, we have the file name. On the top left, we have the quick access toolbar where we can use it for saving files, undo, redo, etc. We have this which is called as the ribbon, and the ribbon has various tabs. The first one is home, then you will have insert, page layout, formulas, data, review, view, etc. Each ribbon has different, or each tab has different features. Then we have the formula bar where we'll be putting our formula. We have the rows over here, row headings, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. We have the column headings A, B, C, D, E, F, and so on. These row and column headings are used to name a cell, which we'll be looking at later on. Uh, a workbook can have various sheets, as you can see here. So this is sheet 1, which is the active sheet that is being used here. There's a status bar that tells you about what is being, whether an Excel file is ready to be worked on or is it busy because of huge computation. We have the zoom and view uh, 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 tab features here. So once again, we have the title bar, the ribbon, the formula bar, the row and the column headings, the worksheets, the status bar, and options to change, view, and control the zoom. We can look at an actual Excel workbook to confirm them. Okay, so let us look at a real Excel sheet and look at all of these things that we have just seen here. So I will just open an already existing Excel file. So this is an already existing Excel file, and whatever we just saw, there over here as well. So this is called as a workbook. This whole Excel file is sometimes called as a workbook. A workbook can have different worksheets. A workbook can have multiple worksheets. Over here there are 3 worksheets. There are nothing, and these worksheets can be renamed just by right clicking on them and say rename. So this can be summary 1, and then the others can be renamed as extras, and so on. They can be renamed as well. They can be given color, tab colors. This is just to give importance. So maybe this is really important tab, so this is red. This is not that important, so the tab color can be yellow. This is not at all important, so it can be something which is not important at all. So I would say a blue, for example. These are so a workbook with different worksheets with different details in it and importance and so on. And then obviously, um, this is the quick access toolbar where we have the save button, the undo button, and the redo button, which is very useful sometimes. This is where it shows the name of the Excel file. Um, this whole thing is called as ribbon, which has various tabs. So these features that I'm mentioning now is always same irrespective of the version of Excel. So if you just quickly go through the home tab. So home tab has the features which is for copying text, cutting text, pasting them, format painting. which is making sure that one format is copied to another cell and so on. Then it has the font tab, font part of the tab where we can change the font type, the font size, make the text larger or smaller, make it bold, italic, underlined. This is very important where we can make a selection and put borders for them. There are different kinds of borders. We can customize borders. We can highlight a cell over here with that, and it highlights it. We can change the text color. So obviously there's a lot of options for that. There's a lot of options for changing the color over there. So that's also, I'm sure you're aware of that. This is for alignment of the text, all right? Um, so that's center aligned, right aligned. This is text direction, so this can be vertical text as well as like that. Sometimes we can do that to reduce the space, the space that is occupied. I mean the width of the column. Um, Sometimes we can merge cells. Maybe I want to merge them and put them. If I just can insert a cell over here, and I can say I can merge it over here. I can merge all of it, and say ABC company Excel file, right? Merging them. I can unmerge them by just clicking over there. That's possible too. Um, you can change the type of whatever. For example, if this is money, I can just change it to currency, and it goes to that. I can change it to percentage. I can put commas so that the formatting of the content, number of zeros that should be there. All of these can be controlled from there. Okay. These are very useful tools. Conditional formatting. This can be explored further. It's a very useful tool for giving details about the data at a glance, and automatically the formatting changes based on the cell content. You can even put these, use some predefined styles over here for your formatting. You can insert cell, delete cell, and so on. This is one more thing, which is for filtering, where you can just select all your text and put a filter on it so that you can select the content over here, and even use equals to, greater than, and so on. So these are things that are possible in Excel, and all of them are under the Home tab. Similarly, you have the Insert tab, where you can insert pictures and tables in your Excel file, clip arts, shapes, and all of that. You can plot with the data available to you. There are different kinds of charting options over here: scatter plots, radar charts, column bar charts, etc. You can use hyperlink. You can link your text to web pages and so on. You can insert equations, symbols. So that's all under the Insert tab. The Page Layout tab is mostly for printing options. Selecting the area that has to be printed. What do you want at the background? Sometimes this is very common problem is changing it from English to Arabic or Arabic to English. For example, this is now in English. You can change it to Arabic by changing the sheet from right to left. And if you click it back again, it's from left to right. Something that I really like over here is I don't like this grid lines that comes over here. So if I just click over there, the grid lines go away. That's a very important feature that I really enjoy from page layout. There is the heading thing which obviously I want to keep because this helps me to name the cells, which is very important. We'll see it later on how the naming helps in referencing. So I advise to keep it. So obviously these are my column headings and these are my row headings that we just saw. Then we have the most important tab in Excel, which is formulas, and there are a lot of formulas and categorized formulas. Uh, I'll be showing you a list of formulas and how they are useful with examples at the end that can be further explored in a face-to-face session or an actual session. So these are the financial formulas in Excel. These are the logical formulas in Excel, text-related formulas in Excel, which we will be exploring in some of the webinars, the date and time formulas that we can look at some examples in the later part of the session. Lookup and reference formulas. VLOOKUP is very important, a very popular function that we'll be looking at later on. There is similarly HLOOKUP, there is match, index, offset. All of these are lookup and reference related formulas. Math and trigonometry formulas are also there in Excel. Other formulas under statistical, engineering, cube, information, is not, is non-text, is number, is odd, is reference, um, compatibility, web, some functions, using XML, URL, etc. So there are a lot of formulas in Excel that can be explored. Then this is something which is giving names to different ranges. It's a very important and useful feature in Excel. These are things that are used to have know the relationship of a cell content with other cell contents. We'll be exploring that later on in the session. The show formula shows the different formulas used in the Excel. These are some of the tricks to check how a formula is working and debugging it. So very important ribbon in Excel, a very important tab in Excel. This over here, the data tab has important features like remove duplication, data validation, which we'll explore in an actual session. This is used for minimizing the error, input error that can happen. Some of the other analysis tools such as what if analysis, grouping columns and tabs. These are also very important features that is found under the data tab. Review tab is mostly for putting some comments, which is a very useful feature in Word as well. So this is also available in Excel. We can also have a protect sheet and protect workbook feature over here where we can put passwords to our workbook and only people with passwords can open the workbook. View is how you want to view your workbook. Zoom it. Formula if you want the headings to be there or you don't want it. The formula bar or you don't want it. Formula bar is a very useful tool. We always would like it to be there. Freeze spans is when you have a large text you want to roll down, but you don't want certain rows and columns to change as you roll from roll down or roll to the right and so on. The other tabs that you can see here is developer, which is a very important tab, needed useful when we are working with macros. Another very important feature in Excel. These other things are add-ons that can come from different um, applications. So that's a quick overview of the different tabs in Excel. Uh, this is the zoom in button that we just saw previously. This is the status button, which is ready. Sometimes you might be dealing with very huge Excel files, and once you do an operation, the Excel might get busy. I have seen many people that complain about Excel because mostly whenever it's a huge database, which is 35 MB, whenever you do an operation or a filter, it takes a lot of time. So that's about some of getting used to the interface. We will be exploring some of the features in this session, this webinar, and it can be further explored afterwards. Cell referencing. In order to increase productivity, it is very important to know how cells are named in Excel. As shown in the slide, the cells are named using column name and the row name. In the illustration on the left, the active cell selected is named as B3 as it is in the intersection of column B and row 3. So cell name is equal to column name, row name. So column name is B, row name is row number is 3, so B3. We can have dollar sign before the row or the column name, and this is used for referencing, and they are termed as relative or absolute referencing. When the formula from one cell is copied to another cell and the referencing in the formula changes accordingly, it is called as relative referencing. When the formula copied from one cell to another cell does not change due to the dollar sign in front of the row or column name, it is called as absolute referencing. So we'll be looking at this later on and it will be clear after an example. So if we go back to our open Excel file, if I want to know the name of this cell, active cell, it's in column E and row number 91, so it's E91. Once more, this cell is going to be F94, cell F94. This is really important later on to know how cells are named because we'll be using them in our formulas, and putting a dollar sign either before the column name or the row name will help in referencing them. So we'll talk about it in detail later on. To let Excel know that you are entering a formula or function, we have to start with an equal sign. Then we can use other mathematical operators such as plus, minus, division, multiplication, etc. It is important to understand that we can type the formulas and appropriate arguments or use the formulas tab and the function library section of the ribbon. So if you go back to our Excel, if I just go and put to any cell, I have to put equal to for Excel to know that I am going to type a formula or a function. I can immediately start by taking two cells and adding them, or by using formula from the formula tab, right? We'll be looking at that afterwards. Without putting equal to, if I write something, Excel does not do anything because it doesn't know it's a formula. Whereas if I put equal to 7 or this plus this, it immediately adds it up. I can just write 7 plus 8, even then it will be adding it up. When reading a formula, Excel will apply this operators in order of precedence, then work left to right. As you can see over here, the highest importance is given to parentheses. Whenever a formula has a parenthesis, it is equated first. The next preference is given to exponent. The next preference is given to multiplication, then division, then addition and subtraction. And if you can note here, multiplication and division are of the same order. So Excel usually does whichever it encounters first. There are many ways of remembering it. So one of the acronym is please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Please is representing parenthesis, E is excuse is representing exponent, my is representing multiplication, dear is representing division, aunt is representing addition, Sally is representing subtraction. So that's one way of remembering the order. Sometimes it is very important because if you're not aware of the order, then even though you have written a correct formula, it does not give you the expected output because of the mix up of preference. This has happened many times. Now we'll be looking at three examples and confirm if you have understood it. If you look at equation number 1 here, this is 2 plus 3 plus 2 minus 4. So Excel will be referring to, will be looking for parentheses. There's no parentheses. The next thing is exponent. There's no exponents. Then the next thing is multiplication, none, no division. There is a addition and then there is subtraction. So now it will go from left to right. So it's going to do the additions first and then the subtraction. So if you look at it, 2 plus 3, 5, 5 plus 2, 7, 7 minus 4 is 3. So that's the answer. Similarly, if we look at the second one, it will do the multiplication first and then go from left to right with plus and minus. So it's going to do a 6 over here. So 2 plus 6 minus 4. 2 plus 6 is 8. 8 minus 4 is 4. Over here, the same thing will give you a different answer just because of the preference. Over here, even though we are supposed to do multiplication first, but the parenthesis has a higher order of preference than multiplication. So it's going to be parenthesis first, which is 2 plus 3 times 2 minus 4. So 5 times 2, 10, 10 minus 4 is 6. It's very clear over here that the preference has to be known in order to have the expected output. Okay, after having understood the order of preference that Excel uses whenever there are formulas, Let us look at some of the built-in functions that is available in Excel. Excel can move beyond. Before I go ahead, let me just increase, make it, yeah. Excel can move beyond simple mathematical operations with the use of formulas and functions. Functions are predefined formulas. Each has a specific syntax pattern. As discussed before, functions start with an equal sign, followed by the function name and opening parenthesis. The arguments for the function separated by commas and then a closing parenthesis. As we can see here, we have an equal to sign, the name of the function, and opening parenthesis arguments. Over here, there's a semicolon over here which represents that all the cells from B5 to G5 are arguments, and then there's a closing parenthesis. This is a syntax, or this is the way how functions are written. The function name sum is a built-in function. Obviously, as the name suggests, it is used for adding. It can be changed with other built-in functions that we'll look at later on. We can also use the formula bar to know about more about any function. So we'll look at an example to understand it. So I'm just going to go to a new Excel file, and just for example, I will just write numbers here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, if I want to add them up, obviously one way of adding them up is it's a formula, so equal to this plus this plus this plus this plus this. This is a way. This is called as user-defined function, where the user is telling what to do, and in this case, I'm just telling them that content of A2 should be added with A3, should be added with A3, A4, A5, A6, and so on. Obviously, that's the answer. This can also be done using built-in function. So over here, I just go equal to, and I know I'm aware of a function called sum. So I write equal to sum, and I can just open the parenthesis over here. And if I go to the formula bar over here, it will tell me what are the inputs, or it will tell me more about this function. So sum, the function sum, adds all numbers in the range of cells. So over here, the inputs are number 1, number 2, and so on. It says number 1 are 1 to 255 numbers to sum. Logical values and text are ignored in cells, included if typed as arguments. So if I just say over here that add this up with this, with this, with this, and this, so it adds it in real time, and it tells me the answer. So that's one way. Another way would be, so that's equal to sign, name of the function, opening parenthesis, arguments, and then the closing parenthesis. Or I can do it, I can just select them. So I tell Excel that please sum everything from A2 to A6, whatever is there. So I've given it a range, and then enter. So we have seen here that how to use a built-in function, how to use this feature in Excel to know more about the function, and what can be the different inputs for the function. Over here, as you can see, number 1 is just using one input, which is all the numbers from A2 to A6. Yeah, that's very, so that's about built-in function sum. So we'll be looking at we'll be looking at an actual example to know more about it. All right, let us look at an example workbook and try to use some of the built-in functions. So we will be opening this Excel file, and let us know a little bit more about what is happening here. So this Excel file is the revenue details for different months: April, May, June, July, August, September, for Classic Gardens and Landscapes CGL. It has revenue from different subcategories such as lawn maintenance, tree and shrubbery, patio and furniture, mount fountains and irrigation, and design consulting. So it has listed down the different revenues for different months over here. Now, it's very important to understand the data first before performing any analysis or operations on it. It's very important. Now, the manager has asked us to find the total revenue, average, minimum, maximum in the month of April using whatever functions or formulas we can. Because we know that there are some built-in functions such as sum that can do the revenue, average that can find the average, min that can find the minimum, and max that can find the maximum, we'll try to explore it over here. So to begin with, we will just go to cell B10 where we want to find the revenue, and our objective is to add the cell contents of B5, B6, B7, B8, B9. So as we learned before, we will be putting an equal to sign, make use of the built-in function sum, open parenthesis, and we can go here to know more about how it works. Okay, that's how it works. Now it's going to add all the numbers in the range of cells. So I will just select the cells over here. So it will select from B5 to B9 and it shows over there. I press OK. So I get the addition of all the revenues in the month of April. For average, again, equal to sign. I am aware of a function average. I don't know the exact spelling of it, so I will just write AVE, and Excel will suggest me the different functions that are available over here. So there is average that I'm aware of. Let me go and click on it. Returns the arithmetic returns the average arithmetic mean of its argument, which can be numbers or names, arrays, or reference that contain numbers. Pretty much what I want. I double click on that. I go here, confirm the inputs that are required, give him the range. I press OK. It tells me the average revenue that comes in the month of April from different categories. Minimum, I'm sure we are pretty much aware of how to do it. So equal to min I'm aware of that there is there's some function that finds the minimum. So I write min. I see a lot of them: min a, minute, min verse. We can explore it further afterwards based on our needs, but currently we just need the minimum. So it tells us, so that we, I think so min over here is good enough. It returns the smallest number in a set of values, ignores logical values and text. So double click, we go over here, select the range. Okay, I think so that should do it. Okay, and it gives us the minimum. For finding maximum, again, I go to cell B13, click on equal to. I think that there might be a function maximum. Okay, there's a function max, not even maximum, max, short form, that returns the largest value in a set of values. So I double click on that, go to this insert function option that tells me this formula dialog box, and it tells me that it returns the largest value in a set of values, ignores logical values and text, and it just needs a cell, a range of cells that it needs to take the maximum out of. So I just select all of them, I click on OK, and it gives me the maximum over here. So I have done it where it does it automatically, and the good thing is there will be no errors that can happen because this is done with an automatic calculator. Once again, we just used, we have to be aware of the different, we have to be aware of the data that we are working on. So it's a classic gardens and landscapes revenue sheet, for example, where it tells the different revenue, the different revenue from different subcategories for different months. And what we did is we are trying to find the monthly revenue, total revenue that comes from the different categories, the average of it, the minimum that was collected, and the maximum automatically. So we have used functions sum, average, min, and max. And we have been aware of how to use the insert function or feature that gives us the formula dialog box. All right, moving ahead. Now we just did it for 1 month. We want to do the same thing for other months. Now, for doing it for other months, we can either just continue what we did here for the first month, April, or we can use a feature that can copy the formula to the other cells. Let's go back to our open sheet. I want to copy the total revenue formula that is done for April to the other cells so that it does it for the other months as well. So the best way to do that is go to the cell that the that contains the formula and you want to copy to the other cells. Go to the bottom right where you will see a plus sign. Click on the plus sign and drag it to cells where you want it to be copied to. So I drag it here to all of them. Now, so the formula is dragged it's always important to confirm if the formula is correctly copied. So I go to the month of May, I check if this sum, so I go to the formula bar, I go and click on the selection, and yes, it does copy, or it is adding the subcategories in the month of May. So if once I have confirmed it, I'm sure that it's going to work for others as well. But just to be in the safe side, I go to the month of September, check it, it works fine. Very nice. So similarly, I go to average cell where the formula is there, go to the bottom right, drag it to the other cells. Again, check it, it works fine. Check it, works fine. Check again one more time, works fine. Good. Again, now sometimes you don't want to do it row by row. Instead, you can just go and select all of the cells over here, for example. So let me just delete them just to show this working. I select all of them, go to the bottom right, copy the formulas on the right. Now, by doing so, what happens is the formula in B10 is copied to C10, D10, E10, F10, G10, and so on. The formula in B13 is copied to C13, D13, E13, F13, G13, and so on. Let's go and check if it works fine. This is supposed to do maximum, so it does max. Selection D5 to D9. Excellent. Very nice. Let's go somewhere else. This is supposed to take the minimum. It does take the minimum. Let's check the selection. It does it properly. Very nice. Now, this referencing, as you can see over here, has no dollar signs in front of the row or the column name. This is called as relative referencing. So the formula or the referencing is copied always relatively. There is no fixed cell or fixed row or column. Sometimes we don't want the row or the column name to change as it is copied from one cell to another. And that is where we will use absolute referencing. We'll have a good example to understand that better. But for the time being, let us understand that whenever there is no dollar sign in our referencing, it is known as relative referencing. So relative referencing is referencing where as the formulas are copied, the referencing also changes according to the cell that it is copied to. So over here it is B5 to B9. When the formula is copied to F10, it will change F5 to F9, and so on and so forth. Okay, so what we have learned over here is how to use the built-in function based on a scenario that is given to us, how to understand, how to know the different input, and how to make use of that information, confirm our calculation once, so that once it is copied to others, we can rely on whatever Excel gives us. The advantage of doing so is that it makes job faster and error free. All right, excellent. Moving ahead, as we have seen earlier, that we can use functions, built-in functions or user-defined functions to do our operations. Now, we will see one more feature that is available in Excel and can be useful for quick actions. And that's in the Home tab at the end in the editing as an editing toolbar. So if you look over here, there is auto sum, or there are sum, average, max, min, some of the functions that are very commonly used. So the trick to use them is just to go to the cell where we want it to operate. So obviously, if you recall that we had this Excel file for a company where the monthly expense in different monthly revenue for different month from different subcategories are provided, and the manager wanted to know what was the revenue for each month, the average revenue, the max and the min. So we can just go to the cell B10 where we want to know the revenue, total revenue, which is the sum, and we can just go to this option over here and say sum and select it and enter. Similarly, we can just drag it to all the form to all the other cells, confirm the working. Very nice. Let's go to the average again. We go to this option and say average. We have to be careful with the selection. We don't want to select the total revenue over there, enter, and then this can be copied to all the other cells in the similar fashion. Same thing goes with minimum. Again, it automatically selects all the cell above it, so we have to make the appropriate selection and then copy the formula everywhere else. The same thing goes for max, so we go here, max, and obviously we have to make the appropriate selection, and then select it for the different cells. So the objective of introducing you to this feature is we are trying to make use of as many um, features as possible.
Similarly, we can explore further the count functions and its variations. The various versions of count are shown in the table here with the description. We'll be exploring some of them based on our problem. They work pretty much the same as sum, min, max, and average in terms of syntax or arguments. Some of the count functions are count, for example. It counts the number of cells in a range that contains numbers. That's the important thing. The syntax is, as usual, equal to count, open parenthesis, the range of cells, close parenthesis. Count a variation of the count function, is used to count the number of cells in a range that contain any data, type, text, or numbers. Count is for numbers. Count A is for any data, type, text, or numbers. So the syntax is
count A, open parenthesis, range of cells, close parenthesis. Count blank is another variation. So that counts, as the name suggests, it counts the number of blank cells in a range, equal to count blank, open parenthesis, the cells, and then the close parenthesis. Countif is an advanced version of the count function where it counts the number of cells in a range based on specified criteria. So it will count in the number of cells only if the criteria is met. Only if. So count if. So an example is equal to count if, open parenthesis, it has two arguments. One is the cells that you want to count and the condition. So it will count all the cells where there is services. So the syntax is countif, the cells, and the criteria. Some other versions which are not that popular but can be useful is decount, decount A. Decount is it counts the number of amount of numbers in a database range that meets specified criteria. So equal to decount, open parenthesis, you specify the database, the field, and the criteria. The field over here, database could be a table, field could be a column, and the criteria in that column. Decount A is counts the amount of text entries in a database range that meet specified criteria. So that's similar to count A, where count A is for counting anything in the range, and count is for counting the numbers. Decount is database, where we are looking for numbers, and decount A is database, where we are looking for anything. It can be numbers, text, or anything. Okay, so we're going to explore these count function with the help of an exercise. Um, so let me open a function count. As usual, whenever we have any Excel file, it's always better to know more about it. So this is a workbook with three sheets: sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3. But I think there's nothing in sheet 2 and sheet 3. Everything is in sheet 1. This is a workbook with transactions done in different region using different payment methods from different sources. So different regions, north, south, east, west, different payment methods such as PayPal, credit. That's what I can see here. From different sources, payment is done using email, Facebook, web, etc. There is the number of the prices per item, number of items sold, and the total sale, which is nothing but price and number of sold, I suppose. It also specifies the format, product format, the topic, and the time of the day when the transaction was done. There is an column discount which is not mentioned here. Maybe it needs a formula to be input. Each transaction has an unique identifier in the transaction ID column. Some of them are empty, that could be due to various reasons. So always it's better to know the Excel file that we are working on so that we can use appropriate functions on appropriate columns. Now, if we go towards the end, the manager has given us this Excel file and wants to know how many transactions don't have an ID. He also needs to know how many transactions are done in region north and how many transactions are done by credit. So as you can see how many, so he just needs the count. That means how many number of times it happened. So I'm sure by now you know that the best thing to do over here is to use the function count and its various variations, right? Various versions. Let's go and look at the first one. How many transactions ID are blank? So I have to put the answer here. So obviously there are 100, not 100, sorry, there are 99 because the first row is the column, is the heading. So there are 99 transactions done, and I'm sure it's going to be, you know, there's no way that we can, there's no point of doing it manually. So let's try to use some formulas here. So it says number of transactions that are blank. We can easily use the count blank function that we had seen earlier. Count blank that counts the number of cells in a range that are blank. So let's try to use that over here. So I go here, I go and say equal to count blank. Okay. If I just write count, it's going to show me the various versions of count. So count blank. Once again, if I just say count blank counts the number of empty cells in a range, specified range of cells, makes sense. This is what I want to do. So double click, I go to FX, the range. So obviously the best place to look for is in this um, this column. So I go select all of them till the end. So it selects A2 to A100, and it shows me in real time that there are 10 cells without any transaction ID. Great, good, that was quick. Now we need to know how many transactions in region north. So again, I can use count, but I have a condition that I need to count only when a condition is met, which is when the region is north. So the best thing to use over here is count if. So I'll go equal to count if, and count if, and if I just go back, count if counts the number of cells within a range that meet the given condition. So that's what I want. Count if, double click, I go here, it tells me the range and the criteria. So the best place to use this is in the regions column because that's where I have the value east, and I want to check how many times the transactions were done from north. So the criteria, I have to put north, right? Now the problem is this north has to be in inverted commas. So because as you can see, it doesn't show me anything, it shows me 0, but I can see that there are some transactions done in north. So I have to put it in double parentheses
and it shows me that there were 29 transactions that were done in the north region. Excellent. Now let's go and do the third one. How many payments were done by credit? So again, the best function to use over here is count if, and the column that I should select is the range. The column that I should select is payment. So I select all the payment option there, and I just have to be sure that I put the correct term. Sometimes if you do mistakes, for example, small, even, the good thing is this is not case sensitive. Let me put all of it in capital letter and still it works. So the criteria is not case sensitive. As you can see, it's written in capital C and all of them are in lowercase, but this one is not case sensitive. But definitely, if I don't put the exact term, so instead of credit, if I put credit and a space, it doesn't work. So it has to be exactly what is the input over there. Now, this kind of input errors can be fixed by data validation, filters, and filters, data validation, etc., which is definitely doable and can be explored further in another session. All right, so we have seen the importance of knowing, being aware of the data, and how, based on what is needed, we can see the functions and how they are useful. All right, so we have seen this. Now we will be getting more acquainted to the absolute and relative referencing with an example.
Um, Let us explore this one more version of count function, which is dcount. Dcount is a very useful function where we have a database, which can be in a form of a table, and the syntax for dcount function is just like any other formula, equal to dcount, open parenthesis, and the arguments are is the database, the field that you want to check from, and the criteria. So the best way to understand more about it is with the help of an example. So let us assume that we have a database which has things like details like size, color, and price of a shoe. So now we want to find the number of shoes which with a criteria that is input. So this would be our database, and um, this would be our criteria that will be checking the database with, and based on that it will give us a count that there are so many matches of this criteria on this database. Okay, let's look at this example to understand this better. So let us open the Excel file again and let us understand it that it's a database where we have the size, the color, and price of shoes. It's a list. So let me just call this as, sorry, let me call this as our database. Just a minute. Let us call this, let this be our database, and we will have our criteria over here where we have the same columns, and we put input here, and we will have number of shoes that match the criteria in the database. So obviously it will be based on our context where we want to match this criteria with this database and see how many of them, how many of this criteria is matched. So because how many, that means how many counts of this criteria is matched on the database. So we'll be using the function dcount. So dcount, right? And then we go to the formula dialog box. The database is obviously the dcount is function counts the cells containing numbers in the field column of records in the database that match the conditions you specify. So database is obviously, this is my database. Field is either the label of the column in double quotation marks or a number that represents the column's position in the list. So let us put the criteria over here, and let us say field 1 and see how it works. So if I say size 1 of color red, so I have 10. Let us check that. So let me go and say color red, and how many do I have? 10 of them. Okay, that's good. So if I say brown, it says 0. So there is no match of brown color with size 1. But what if I say brown color of size 7? So it says me there are 7 of them. There are 5 of them. So that works fine. So this is an example where I have certain criteria and I have a database. So this criteria, whatever is here, is matched with this database. So if I say, is there any shoe of size 7, color brown, and price 47? None. Price 88? Oh, there are 5 of them that are in the store of size 7, color brown, and price 88. So obviously there are many ways of doing it, but one way of dealing with such um, such problems is by using the function decount. So once again, recap: decount function has a database, a field, okay, that is going to be matched. Even if I don't put that, it works without that, because over here we are matching three criteria, and I mentioned the criteria over here. Okay, so let us open. All right, so now in this Excel workbook, which is a simple one, what we will try to do is try to multiply the numbers in column A with the numbers in the row 3. So an example is given here. So this cell, which is B4, we are multiplying B3 with A4, right? So this is multiplied with this. Now, if I want to do it in this cell, what I need to do is equal to this A4 multiplied with C3, and and so on. So if I have to do it over here, it will be A7 multiplied with K3, and so on. That's very easy, right? Now, if you just copy the formula, you can do it, manually, but that's going to be really troublesome, right? There's going to be a lot of inputs that you have to do. Now, if you want to copy it, okay, that something happened. Let's go and check. Sorry, let's make it smaller. If I go to this, which is B5, what am I multiplying? I'm multiplying, oopsie, that's wrong. I'm multiplying A5, that's all right, but not with B3. We are multiplying it with B4. That's that's logical, right? Because I am using relative referencing. Relative referencing, that means as the formula is copied, the referencing also changes accordingly. So this is not useful. Now this is where we need to use absolute referencing, telling Excel that I will be copying formulas, but I don't want you to change the column or the row uh, relatively. I want you to keep some of them fixed. So that can be done by putting a dollar sign in front of the row or the column name. So over here, we have to see which one doesn't change. So when the numbers are in the column, the rows change, but the column doesn't change. In that way, I can say that for A4, don't change the row, don't change the column because it doesn't change, but the row can keep changing. Similarly, for B3, As you can see, all the numbers are in the row. So the columns change, but the row doesn't change. So I can just say you can change the column relatively, but don't change the row number. So now in this cell referencing, I'm telling him that you can always change the row, but the column doesn't change, as all the numbers are in the column A. For this, you can change the column, but the row doesn't change, as all the numbers are in the same row, third row. I get the same correct answer. Now let us drag the formula to the right and then to the bottom. Now let us go and check one of them. So let me go and check this. So it's coming from the respective cell in column A and the respective cell in row 3. So A8 is multiplied with C3. So the formula is copied, but as the formula is copied to different cells, the cell, the one which has a dollar sign in front is not changed, the rest is changed. We can also confirm it using another feature that is available in Excel that comes under formula ribbon, formula tab, sorry. In the ribbon, the formula tab, there is trace precedence. So whenever I click on a cell, I click on trace precedence, it shows me where does the presiding information come from. Similarly, if I go somewhere else over here, trace precedence, so that's another way of making sure that my formula or referencing is done properly. Before we um, wrap it up, I want to show you some of the Excel functions that or details about some of the Excel or more details about how many functions are available and what all things you will be exposed to in during an actual course. So if you look over here, we have some sample examples of around 202 Excel functions with examples of how to use them in a scenario. And there is a reference document which talks in details about the various functions available in Excel, what is the syntax, what is the description of it, what are the syntax of it, and how to make use of the Excel file. So, for example, there are functions for date and time. So, it talks about what is the date function. It says the date function in Excel is categorized under Excel data time functions. It is the main function used to calculate dates in Excel. The date function is very useful for financial analysis because financial modeling requires specific time periods. For example, an analyst can use the date function in Excel in their financial model to dynamically link the year, month, and day from different cells into one function. I'm sure the people who are working in finance have to deal a lot with cash flow, a lot to deal with interests. So they need to know what is the difference between the date input earlier and today's date. So all of that scenarios, the date function comes really handy. So it not only tells you about the date function, but also examples of where it can be useful. The date function is also useful when providing dates as inputs for other functions such as SUMIFs or COUNTIFs, since you can easily assemble a date using year, date, month, and day values that come from a cell reference or formula result. So that's the syntax. Date requires year, month, and day, and it tells you more about what is an year, what is the month, and what is the date. What is the day? Um, this is a required argument. The value of the year argument can include 1 to 4 digits. Excel interprets the year argument according to the date system used by the local computer. By default, Microsoft Excel for Windows uses the 1900 date system, which means the first date is January 1st, 1900. Month, sometimes some arguments are required or optional. So over here, year and month are required argument. It can be a positive or a negative integer representing the month of the year from 1 to 12. Excel will add the number of months to the first month of the specified year. For example, date 27-14-2 returns the serial number representing February 2nd, 2018. When the month is less than or equal to 0, Excel will subtract the absolute value of month plus 1 from the first month of the specified year. For example, date -32 returns the serial number representing September 2015. So in other words, um, these descriptions over here not only talk in detail about what is the function, how it is useful, more details about the formula or the syntax and the arguments that are used over there, and some examples of how to use the date function in Excel. And we have examples, various examples of them. Um, so that's only date function. There is dated if function. There are examples of them. There are examples of rundown and various versions of all the Excel that you see there. Date value function similarly. So in that manner, it is not only showing you what is the description, how to use it, even screenshots of it. So we will be going through some of them in the next webinar, um, and looking at some examples that are very much related to the day-to-day uh, work or professional work life. Some of the important functions, these are all functions related to date and time. EO month is end of month. That's a very important function that is used in financial modeling, used by financial modeling people. That's an information function is ISO week number. Finding out the ISO week number for of the year for the given date value. Minute function. So it's there are a lot of very useful and handy functions that are available in Excel, and based on the question in hand we can explore the one that might be useful. time function. Today, a very important function in Excel that tells us what is the day today. So if you just use the formula equals to today, it will tell you today's date. So on and so forth, right? We will be exploring some of the functions from here. For example, if, um, VLOOKUP, concatenate, left, right, find. Uh, so that's a document that will be available in an actual course, and some of them will be practiced in the session and is also looked in this webinar. These are the files that will be used during the exercise. So after having done an exercise, let us try one more time where we have the similar thing. We have rows with numbers. We have a row with numbers and column with numbers, and obviously we are expected to multiply them, and the formula has to be copied throughout. So this is a quick, we are just doing it again just to confirm that we have understood what we just did. So obviously it is equal to this multiplied with this. Before we go ahead, we know that we will be copying this formula throughout in the other cells. So we need to make sure that the rows and columns that will be fixed are referenced using dollar, or in other words, there is absolute referencing, so that once they are copied to others, they don't change. As all the numbers over here are in the column and only the rows change, the column is fixed, so I can just put a dollar in front of the row, telling Excel that please don't change A, but you can change the column, the row, I mean. Similarly, as you can see here, the columns change, but the row is fixed. So I will tell Excel that please, you can change uh, the column, but don't change the row. I do a quick check using the trace precedence. That's fine. I copy the formula throughout on the right and then copy it down as well. Quick check again. Trace precedence. Very nice. That's okay as well. One more check. Trace precedence. So that's fine as well. We can also use this show formulas in the formula tab to see if the formula is, how the formula is changing throughout. So as you can see in cell B17, it's in cell B16, it is A16 multiplied with B15. In cell C18, it is A18 multiplied with C15. So in this manner, we can always confirm our formula placement, and this just makes the whole job faster, quicker, and error-free.
over here, we'll be looking at some logical functions such as SUMIF and COUNTIF. SUMIF and COUNTIF are very commonly used logical functions. COUNTIF is used to count cells, as the name suggests, whenever a condition is met. Similarly, SUMIF is used to sum cell contents where the stated condition is met. The syntax for COUNTIF and SUMIF are presented below. Similar to any other function, you can start with an equal to, the name of the function, open parenthesis, and the parameters that are needed for COUNTIF is the range of cells where it will look for the criteria, and if the criteria is met, they will be counted. Similarly, in SUMIF, just like any other functions, you start with an equal to, SUMIF, open parenthesis, and the arguments are the range where the criteria will be checked, and whenever the criteria is met, the corresponding cell from this sum range will be added up. Let us take an example to understand it better. So we'll be looking at an Excel file which looks like this, and we'll be looking at examples on how to use COUNTIF and SUMIF. As we have discussed earlier, it is very important to understand the data before doing any sort of analysis or calculation using it. This Excel workbook shows the data of medical equipments, which is over here, or which is in column D, product, which includes stethoscopes, baby machine, ambu-bag, etc., sold by different sales representatives, represented in column B, sales representatives, to different companies, represented in column E, which are usually hospitals and clinics. The state where it is sold is represented in column C. The date is in column A. The date is in a different format. Yeah, yeah. Is in column A, and the sales total, which is the number, total sales that is done for that product by that representative in the state for the company, is in column F. Now, the manager has asked us to show the count of sales done by different sales representative and also the total sales that is done by them. Looking at the problem, the best way to solve this is by using COUNTIF and SUMIF function. Thus, we go to cell I2, yes, I2, cell I2, and use the function COUNTIF to know the number of sales that is done by Susan. And then over here, we'll use SUMIF in cell J2 to know what is the total sales done by Susan. Obviously, in order to be efficiently use the features of Excel, we will just copy the formula and by dragging the formula down. So I'm sure you have guessed it right. We will be making use of absolute and relative referencing here. So we go to cell I2 and start with the function COUNTIF. So equal to COUNTIF, and then open the formula bar. In the beginning, it's going to be, you might need it, but later on, as you become more and more used to Excel, you can work without them. So the range over here is going to be obviously column B, and the criteria is it has to be Susan. Now, as we will be copying the formulas down, we have to be aware of the cells or the column and rows that don't change. So obviously we know the answer that it is Susan has done 398 sales, but we want to use or we want to use the same formula in the other cells as well. So the best way to do that is to know the rows and columns that don't change when we copy the formula. So this doesn't change. The column or the column B does not change because all the time we are referring to the sales representative. So we will be putting a dollar in front of that. Over here, the sales representatives are in column H and the rows change. So we will be putting a dollar sign in front of H. The formula works fine. So once again, as we are inputting the arguments, we know the column H doesn't change, which contains the sales representative names don't change, and also the column B that contains the sales representative details don't change. We will be using absolute referencing with dollar for those specific rows and columns, as shown here. Similarly, for the logical function SUMIF, we can use SUMIF to know the number of sales, total number of sales that is done by Susan. So we go to column J2, we write the formula SUMIF, open the formula dialog box. The range that will be where the criteria will be checked is obviously column B. The criteria is we will be looking for Susan, and once we find Susan, we will be adding the sales total column. So the sum range is the sales total column. So over here it shows the total
whenever the sales is done by Susan. Now, as we want to make sure that the formula can be copied to the other cells, we have to make sure, or we have to know the columns and rows that don't change or should not change when the formula is copied. So the the sales representative column should not change, so we will have dollar sign over there. Once again, the criteria, which is sales representatives, are in column H but in different rows. So the column H doesn't change, the rows can change. The sum range should be from column F, so that doesn't change. Once again, as we are inputting the arguments, we know the column H, which contains the sales representative names, don't change, and also the column B that contains the sales representative details don't change. The the sum range, which is in column F, also does not change, so we will be putting dollar signs in front of them. Once we are confirmed that the formulas are correct, we will just drag it down and we will check again randomly if the formula are actually doing the right referencing. Yes, it is looking for Mark from column B. Very nice. Let's look at SUMIF. It is looking for Mark from column B, and whenever it finds it, it is adding whatever is there in that respective column F. Now, the manager did not stop there. The manager has asked us to find the number of sales of different products and the total sales in each of the products. So we will do the similar COUNTIF and SUMIF function use over here with the respective columns and absolute referencing. So we go here, equal to count if formula dialog box. This time my range is the product column and the criteria is the product over here, which is stethoscope. We have to make sure we know that we will be copying the formula in the other cells, so we have to make sure that we do absolute referencing for the row or the column that does not change or should not change. So obviously the range should not change, which is coming from the product column or column D, and the criteria, which is the products mentioned in column M. The column M should not change, the rows might change, so there should be a dollar in front of column name. Okay, let's drag it down and let's go and check. Yes, it is counting BP machine from column D. Let's check AmbuBag. Yes, it is counting AmbuBag from column D. Let's go to SUMIF. Again, we need to find the total sales done using done for the product stethoscope. So we'll be using equal to sum if formula dialog box. The range is, we will be looking for the product name, or the criteria will be checked in column D. The criteria is stethoscope, and once the criteria is met, then we will be adding the value in the column F, which is the sales total. We have to make sure that we know the rows or columns that don't change, as the formula will be copied to other cells. So this should not change. So there's a dollar in front of that. The criteria is all in column M, so column M does not change. The rows change. The sum range does not change, so that remains fixed using the absolute referencing. Okay, we go to the cell, we go to the bottom right, look for the plus sign, drag it down. We go and check other cells and see that yes, BP machine is checked in product column, which is column D, and the respective total from column F is added. Let's check one more time. So we go to the cell, click on the arguments inside the sum if function. It shows us what it is, referring to. So it's looking for AmbuBack from product and then adding it up, adding the sales total. We can also do the checking using the trace precedence that we saw earlier. And for that, we go to the ribbon, formulas tab, trace precedence, and the precedence is AmbiBag, the product column, and the sales column. We can remove we can do one more check, and it works. We can do one more check for count randomly. It's looking at emergency lamp in the products column. Finally, we reach to the end of this webinar. I hope you enjoyed this webinar. If you have any questions or for more information about the professional training programs offered by the Continuing and Professional Education Directorate at UDST, please contact the CPE team through the email or phone number provided here. Once again, thank you so much and hope to see you in another similar webinar.